Let's date forever. Here's your weekly dose of relationship fuel with Sammy and Nathan Yeager. Hello and welcome to Date Forever. In this week's episode, we're chatting about rediscovering yourself post-cancer, what the idea of 10 seconds of courage is, how do we build or create more courage, and embracing gratitude for the small and big things in life. But before we dive into that, Sammy, what's been fueling you up this week?
Oh my gosh, we had such a nice weekend. We had an extra day. We took the Friday off, flew to South Australia and bounced between some of our most favourite people.
Yeah, how good was it? Caught up with lots of friends and family and had a couple of big events as well. And yeah, it was so nice.
So if you've listened to the show before, you've probably heard us talk about that we live in Sydney, but our family and a lot of our close friends are all in Adelaide. And we hadn't been home to South Australia in over 18 months. So we had lots of new babies to meet.
So many new babies.
Yeah, but that's what really nourished me the most. Definitely fueled my tank up to see some of my most favorite people in person and have the kind of chats that are harder to have over the phone too.
Yeah, definitely. And that was exactly what fueled me up as well. It is so much easier. And there's a different level of connection, I think, when you are there in person with someone than over the phone. And I mean, like the magic of Zoom and phone and everything is so great to have and does help to keep those connections alive. But there is something just really nice about being there in person, isn't there?
Yeah. And, just the more organic conversations, like the incidental kind of things in each other's company. But that was absolutely the thing that fueled me up. And along with going to a wedding and your parents' 40th wedding anniversary.
I know. What a special milestone.
40 years married. It's so, so wonderful.
Yeah, it is.
And how lucky are we that we've got such wonderful role models?
Yeah, it is really beautiful, isn't it? But now, here's this week's guest.
Today, we've got Nadine Champion joining us. She's a courage creator, resilience revolutionary. She is best known for her speech and book, 10 Seconds of Courage. Nadine is a martial artist with over 35 years of experience, a champion fighter and cancer survivor. She loves being in people's corner as a mindset coach and helping them go from feeling stuck to taking courageous action. She's also a sausage dog lover who lives in the beaches of Sydney with her amazing new wife. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited. That was a great intro.
Yeah, you've done some pretty cool things.
Oh, well, the sausage dogs or I accosted someone on the beach to pat their baby sausage dog only a day ago. So
they're just novelty size, aren't they? They're so cute.
Yeah. It was very cute.
So I have a question. How long do you stay a newlywed? Because I think you might be on the cusp of newlywed status still.
Yeah, I mean, we're coming up to our first anniversary in November.
Newlywed.
So,
yeah, amazing.
Yeah, I think the first year still, or is it, depends who you are. Maybe if you're an older person, like a senior, you would look back and go, oh, first 5 years of your 55-year marriage, who knows? But I still feel like a newlywed.
Yeah, but you had a COVID wedding, didn't you? Or a post-COVID wedding?
Yeah, no one got COVID at our wedding.
It wasn't a COVID party. It wasn't one of those types of
parties. No, we actually, when COVID was just starting, we had looked at a venue and the next day we were emailing them saying, okay, we want to pay our deposit. And they didn't get back to us. And they'd been getting back to us so quickly up until that point. That was the day that everything shut down for COVID. So we were like, oh, guess we're not getting married there or anytime soon. So, as is the way of things, try to control. And if you try to force, it doesn't always work. So leverage is better. So we just tried to leverage the situation as it happened. And it ended up being exactly what it was meant to be.
Which was what?
Well, it was different to what we thought it was going to be, but it got smaller. As I think so many people's worlds got smaller during COVID. We thought, well, who do we invite and what's the best thing? And even family couldn't make it. My wife's from New Zealand, so her family couldn't come over. So it ended up being a little intimate gathering on a super yacht.
Amazing.
So, outside. So it was COVID safe and suited us more. Like we're both quite, we didn't want to have a big formal fancy wedding. We wanted to have one where we got to say what we really meant to each other and just be around the closest people. So it was perfect.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Tell us a little bit about your love story, because I know it's a bit special.
Special in a good way?
Yeah, like heartwarming special.
Oh, thank you. Well, we've been together for 8 years tomorrow, oddly enough.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So funny.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So this is the longest and best relationship I've ever had. We met at the gym, which is, a great place to make new friends. But yeah, we met by chance at the gym and just started chatting, and we had one of those conversations where, you're both holding big sports bags and you're on your way out the door, and we stood there for an hour and a half, both holding our bags, not wanting to put them down in case the other person might walk away or whatever. So yeah, we started out just really clicking, and then things went from there, and it's such a great relationship. I feel very lucky.
So was it just on from that chance encounter, or did you become gym buddies first and then?
Well, we tried. we tried to become gym buddies, but yeah, it was a funny thing because I was still just coming out of cancer treatment at that point. So I wasn't feeling my most stunning self. And what Nick didn't know when we met was I was wearing a baseball cap at the time at the gym, so she didn't really think anything of it. But I was still growing my hair back out and everything from being sick. So we always joke, well, I joke about myself, to be a bit mean if she did it, but I joke that she found me in the bargain bin. I was going cheap at that point because it was a really challenging time in life. Like I wasn't my best. I was going through a whole lot of stuff. And it was so wonderful that we met at a time when I wasn't my best. And then she was there during the rebuild, during all the wild stuff that happened in a positive way after that. So I feel like the life that I've built for myself in a really positive way is also the life we built together. So
yeah, amazing.
Yeah, lucky ducks.
Yeah. So what did that rebuilding phase look like for you? Like you obviously said that you weren't your best during that cancer treatment time. And so I guess what were you experiencing at that time? And then what did that rebuilding look like for you?
It was funny because it was I'd been through my cancer treatment the year before. So coming out of that time in the year after, that was actually the harder time. And apparently that's really common, but they don't tell you that when you're going through it. So I was trying to rebuild, but I was running on a flat battery. I was trying to rebuild, but I didn't feel right. I didn't look like myself. There were so many things that just felt really left of center, which I think a lot of people are going through a smaller version of that in their lives this year, trying to get past COVID. And I keep hearing with my mindset coaching clients and even the companies that I'm going and speaking for as a professional speaker now, something's a little off. So I feel a bit funny. Maybe my relationship's a bit weird. My friendships have changed. Things are a little bit left of center. So I was definitely left of center at that point, and just trying to find my feet again in a way that physically I couldn't go back and run my business the way I had before. I couldn't do the sport that I enjoyed the way I used to. I had imploded a relationship, which is really common with cancer treatment as well. Just everything changes. And I had to change a lot of things coming out of it. And unfortunately, the perspective it gives you is, there's no time to waste.
Yeah.
And for me, that's a positive perspective.
Yeah. It's really interesting what you mentioned there, because I guess when you are in like the heat of battle and things like that, you are so focused on just overcoming what you need to day to day. And it's actually probably the transition out of that where it becomes more challenging because you've actually got a bit of like, well, all right, what's next? And that's when you really probably need to find yourself and do the hard thinking, I guess, rather than just kind of acting a bit more on impulse and
survival mode.
Doing what you need to.
Yeah, 100% survival mode. One of my clients had a death in the family this week, and I said, and was going through all of the big feelings that went with it. And I said, look, don't judge yourself for how you survive it. Like do what you've got to do this week. And don't be so hard on yourself, because sometimes when big stuff happens in life, you just have to get through to the other side and then deal with whatever hasn't been dealt with. So for me, I was just coming out of it. I picture like, if you're in a little sailboat and there's really turbulent seas, that's getting through the hard time, whether it's cancer, death in the family, whatever's happened, being retrenched at work. You go through this really hard time and then you come out into like a smoother sea. But then you're kind of left wandering around like, my radio doesn't work. Where's my compass? Where's dry land? Like it's disorienting.
Yeah.
So it takes a bit of time to get your direction back.
So I have this pretty morbid outlook that at some point in my life, our life, your life, everyone's life, one of those things that happens to other people will happen to you, whether or not that's sickness, financial unrest, something traumatic happening in a family or with a family member, poor decision of some kind, retrenchment, being fired or dismissed. One of those things is likely to happen. An asteroid of some kind will probably happen. So what can we do?
Sammy.
I know, but it's kind of like if I know that and I'm like prepared for battle.
Yeah.
But I think if you can set yourself up to be in a really great place so that when that thing arrives, your life's at full, not empty. Because I think sometimes those things happen in a relationship when the relationship is already hurting, or something happens in your life when you were already down. So I know a little bit about your story, but can you tell us, I know that the asteroid, the timing of that cancer diagnosis was pretty brutal for you.
Yeah, my brother had just passed away. So he had lung cancer. He was given a terminal diagnosis when they found it. So I'd spent 6 months being there for him, being afraid of being there for him, facing so many things within myself, my own grief, trying to heal family relationships. So it was really confronting time. And then literally right after he passed away, after the funeral, I put a backpack on my shoulder and I felt a little lump behind my collarbone. And I went, no way. Like, what are the chances? So it was pretty not ideal timing. So basically I broke up my relationship. My brother died and I got cancer all in 2 weeks.
Oh, shit.
So
That kicking you when you're down kind of
yeah,
thing. It wasn't
ideal. And there's, like bigger, crazy stuff going on in the background. And it was just like a really hard time in my life before I got sick. But your reality is your perception of things. So I look at it as, I'm so grateful to my brother. And even though he passed, because I was in good health, the lump that I felt behind my collarbone was about the size of half a marble. So I wouldn't have thought anything of it if I didn't have a context and a perception of what it could be. So it's all in how you look at it. So that was a really awful time. And I'm not one of those saccharine sweet, like, it was a gift. It wasn't. It was a faceplant by life, but it's what you do with it. Like we all go through hard things, and they reckon 1 in 2 people will get cancer in their lifetimes. So it's just something that happened. And the beautiful thing from my perspective is it wasn't actually as bad as I thought it was going to be. It wasn't good, but I talk so much about courage, and so many of the fears that we have, we make up. So it didn't actually turn out to be as bad as I thought it was going to be. And what came afterwards was about 100 times better than I could have imagined.
So tell us, you just mentioned it there. You spend a lot of your time now talking about courage, but you made a very quick pivot. You mentioned a little earlier about like you weren't able to keep your business going the way that you had previously. So what was the fork in the road? What happened next that you ended up talking about courage?
Yeah, well, about 6 weeks after I finished treatment, I signed up to do a business accelerator course, a 40-week business accelerator, that I look back now and I go, well, that was ambitious. What was I thinking? But I needed to point myself in a direction. Otherwise, I'd just be sitting there in my boat with no compass, and land was nowhere to be seen. And that for me was not appealing. It didn't feel good. So I pointed myself in one direction. I wasn't in a position to capitalize on everything that I learnt, but it's funny how certain things, you don't see them for what they are at the time. So that gave me a few little changes in perspective that, months and months later, one of my martial arts students asked me over a coffee if I liked TED Talks. And I was like, yeah, sure, I like them. I love Brene Brown and everybody. And she said, would you ever do one? I wonder if you guys would do one if you had the chance.
It's on. I don't know if you probably can't see it from here, but my vision board's behind us, and I've got one of the little squares is a TEDx or a TED Talk. I'll be knocking on your door for some coaching when the time comes.
We'll talk. Yeah. So I mean, I'd never really thought about it before. I'd never considered it an option. I'd never done any public speaking. But yeah, my student worked in advertising. She could see the potential of what we call internal training. So that's all of the mindset stuff that goes with the physical aspect of martial arts. So I didn't think that anyone who didn't do martial arts would find it interesting, because I think of what she did professionally. She could see the broad appeal. So she asked me if I'd be interested in, if I'd ever consider doing a talk. I said, yeah, I suppose, at the worst time in my life to ever be publicly put on show. But that was enough for her. She was on the organising committee of TEDx Sydney. So she put my name down, popped my name in the hat. And the next thing I knew, they were wheeling me out as the closing speaker for TEDx Sydney at the Opera House in 2015 in front of 2,500 people. And wow. I had no cue cards, short-term memory loss from the chemo, and no experience. And you know who spoke before me? Do you know the neurosurgeon, Dr. Charlie Teo?
No, but
I do. Yeah.
Like neurosurgeons and Queen's Counsel, or the King's Counsel now, like barristers and like really, really smart professional people. And then they were like, you should go last. I was like, are you guys crazy? But they knew something I didn't know. So I just went out there and spoke from the heart and shared the lessons that I had. A brilliant teacher. I've had a really amazing teacher for 25 years. I shared the lessons that I'd learned, and I just, in the hope authentically that if they made sense to people, they'd be able to use them too. And apparently it worked. It was well received, and it ended. I did a very special thing that was not planned during the whole writing of the speech process, but I did a demonstration of what this idea of 10 seconds of courage is, which is what I spoke on. And, I got a standing ovation. People had tears running down their faces. I started crying because they're all crying. And the next morning I got a call saying, would you like to do that for a living? And I didn't even know that was a job. So it was truly a life-changing moment, but I didn't go into it. And I think this really gives me a lot of heart. And I try and point this out to people regularly when they're thinking about their own lives. I didn't go into it taking a giant professional swing at creating a new career for myself. I went into it with the most impeccable intentions about growing for myself, about being in other people's corner and sharing. And I think that applies to relationships as well. Like it's not always about the end goal and succeeding. Sometimes it's about just going straight from the heart and doing what you feel is right. And then sometimes what you get in return is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So it sounds like that you used your 10 seconds of courage to say yes to this TEDx talk. But can you give us a little rundown of what that 10 seconds of courage, what the idea behind that is?
I don't know if you've ever done something big and scary that you hesitated about for a long time. I don't know if you've ever missed an opportunity in your life, or especially, so many of the people I work with, and they're high-level corporate people right through to kinder kids. We all have doubts, we all have fears, and our brains are set up to keep us safe. So it's so frequent that we hold ourselves back. Little ways, big ways, you name it. The way that I explain it to people really quickly is imagine, Brad Pitt walks in, or Giselle Bundchen, or whoever's like super hot, Harry Styles, or one of the Hadid sisters, whoever you think is amazing. Imagine they walked into the room you're in and you were single. We would all like to think that we would saunter over and be like, sup, Brad? But would you? Or would you walk halfway over there and then go to the loo instead? We would all hope we would do the brave thing, but we do hold ourselves back. We do miss opportunities because they're hard. Or say something like, going through, I had to have 6 months of cancer treatment. That's a big ask for anyone. Getting through the whole first day is a big ask, let alone, okay, for the next 6 months, you're going to have to do something really hard and scary. Ready, go. The idea of 10 seconds of courage is, I'm just going to make up my mind to do it. Then I'm going to show up on the first day, and I'm going to actually walk into the room instead of showing up and going home. I don't know if you've ever done that outside a Zumba class or anything, but It's some things you have to tackle little bits at a time. So the way my teacher, my sensei, explained it to me, 10 seconds to make up your mind to do it, which takes courage within yourself, and then 10 minutes to start taking action, 10 days, 10 hours, 10 years, however long it is for you to achieve that. And, I like the idea of bite-sized pieces, and I think of it as, we call it down the chute in my house. When you're on a slippery slide or a water slide and you're at the top and it's scary and you're going, I don't think I want to do this. And you want to back out. But then as soon as you take that first little step down the chute, you can't get out of it now. You're doing it. So it's just about taking action.
Yeah, I love that. One of the moments that I remember watching Nath have a real breakthrough in courage was while we were in Thailand, and we went to this old mining site that was now like this empty sort of cave, huge cliff face, dugout hole that was now full of water. And Nath wanted to cliff jump. He really wanted to.
Wow.
And I could see the hesitation, and all of the locals were like running off of this thing, and it was high, and I could see that Nath really wanted to, and I gave him like, you can do it, like I know you can. But watching,
we've been there for like 3 or 4 hours at this point, really.
We're sunbaking, hanging out.
No.
Nathan, we had not been there for we'd been there for a few hours, and watching Nath like try and build his own courage and belief and like certainty that he could do it, and then to watch him actually like run at the edge of a cliff face and jump off was like such a the Nath before that and the Nath after that were different, because I went and did it without any hesitation. I was like, I'm in, go. But it was a really big thing for Nath, and I remember it so vividly because it was such a breakthrough. And it sounds so trivial, like, oh yeah, he did a cliff jump, but it was that built something in you that has never gone. It's never left you since then.
Yeah. It's the power of experience. You gain experience. Now you know that for sure about yourself. And no one can take that from you. Like this is what I did. This is what I found out about myself. And that's a beautiful thing, because we're all afraid of, intimidated by, concerned about different things. So what scares me might not scare you, and the only way we find out is through experience. So I found out halfway through my TEDx talk that I'm not afraid of public speaking. I wasn't sure, but halfway through I'm like, oh, this isn't so bad. And I started to have fun with it. And like I said, we make so much fear up. We create so many fears to hold us back. So getting in there and getting in the ring, getting in there and doing it, sometimes you find out that you're way braver and way more awesome than you thought you were.
So there's two really big things that I want to ask you. One is around your relationship with yourself, and then the other is the role of courage in a relationship. So I think let's start with you. How was your relationship with yourself pre-cancer? And how did that experience change your relationship with yourself?
Oh, my relationship with myself before I got sick was about achievement and pushing myself. So whether that was physically getting in the ring and winning titles and competing, it was about pushing myself in my business, working really hard, maxing out what I could do in a time for money sense. But that comes at a price. And I was willing to pay that price until, I got sick and realized, I can't do that anymore. And it's tricky when it's such a big part of your identity. And then I had to learn to do this thing called resting. I don't know if you've heard of it. I was like, what? It was so against, what I thought, how I perceived myself, how I spent my time. So it took me a couple of years to get the hang of changing my lifestyle around, and they call it the new normal, getting the hang of that. But it did affect my relationship with myself, because I had to value different things. I had to be kind to myself in a way that I hadn't before, and I had to show myself the respect I deserved. So respecting myself wasn't how much money can you make, how many titles can you get. It was, I really need to be gentle with myself, and I'm not known for doing a gentle sport. So it was different, but I think I'm much more friends with myself now. I'm much nicer to myself. So I'm nicer to everyone else too. I've softened, a ton, which I think was probably what the doctor ordered as well. But, I just learned to value different parts of myself and organize my life differently.
Are there any habits or practices that you've got that help you maintain a fueled up relationship with yourself?
I like to learn. So I'm sitting in front of a big bookcase right now. There are so many non-fiction books on my bookcase. So I like to read books about psychology, about happiness, about relationships. I like to read books written by therapists, and listen to
your bookshelf and my bookshelf sound similar.
Yeah. So I want to learn all about that stuff. And when Nick and I met, she looked at my bookcase and she was like, "Ooh, can I borrow that book?" So she, in the first few years, she read all of my books. So then we were speaking the same language. And for my relationship with myself, that learning helps me to understand myself better, which helps me to treat myself with more compassion. Oh, that's why I do that. That's why I feel this in my nervous system. So understanding myself, I think, deepens the relationship just like it does with someone else, learning to understand them better.
Beautiful. And then courage. Tell us about how that's shown up in your relationship with Nick, but how it shows up in general if someone's resisting using that muscle.
There was a lot of courage in the beginning. So we really took our time, which was interesting because, we fell madly in love and it was, Passion City and all of the wonderful things that are meant to happen.
You pushed against the lesbian U-Haul stereotype.
Exactly. So we did the opposite. So we made a decision, like the easy road would have been to move in together straight away. I knew I still had stuff to work out personally, let alone in a relationship sense. So she was really patient with me. And I think that took a lot of courage because she was going into what felt like a less stable part of her life because, we weren't ready to lock it down and do all that stuff. So we agreed to take it slow in the beginning and then live apart for a year on purpose. We called it #long game, playing the long game, because if it really was what we thought it was, we're going to be together for life. So there's no need to rush the start of it. And it was, don't get me wrong, we stayed at each other's houses a lot, but, it was a really good decision because it gave us time to sort out individually what we needed to, but also really get to know each other. So we spent a lot of time asking each other questions, paying attention to how the other person was dealing with different situations. And it was almost like we joke it was an interview process that went for 2 years, like really, are you the person?
A really long probationary period.
Yeah. Well, we also made a deal to not get married for 5 years, which is so, like, I look at it now and go, oh my God, so mature. What was I thinking? But in the context of the relationships we'd been in, I'm 46 now, so I was 38 when we met. So I had a lot of relationship experience of all different lengths. And I'd just come out of a big relationship. So I didn't want to rush. I wanted to have my eyes wide open. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just love or attraction, etc., that this person was someone that I could really make a life with and who had the skills. And part of that was we both had to learn new skills in order to manage our relationship. And probably the number one thing that got me across the line was realizing that this person is willing to do the work, because I'm willing to do the work. And I was yet to find, or hadn't recently found, a partner that really felt like whatever comes our way, you're going to be in it with me. We're both going to work as hard as we could. I had a lot of personal work to do as well. So yeah, I think we did the exact opposite of what I'd done before, or what a lot of people do. But in the context of where we were both coming from, it turned out to be the right choice. And now we laugh about it. We waited 5 years to get married, then COVID, we had to wait 7 years. So the universe paid us back.
Yeah. So what are some of the habits and things that you now do in your relationship to keep that part of your life fueled up?
Oh, we still learn, like we're even just this week, Nick sent me a podcast. Have you listened to this one? I think you'd like that. We're both hungry to keep growing for ourselves, but together, we talk a lot. We talk a lot about all kinds of different things, and we make sure that we're connected, that we're really listening to the other person. Are you still okay with how we divide the chores around the house? Are you still okay with how we're going to divide this financially? Are you okay? Like, how are you? We're both quite connected, and really we make sure that the other person feels like it's balanced, feels really seen. And we make a lot of time to, have a cuddle in the morning and do all those things that, I never want to take those things for granted. And it was funny because a friend of Nick's this week, I got up in the morning and I was like, where is she? And I could hear her on the phone at the other end of our place. I was like, who's she talking to? It was like 6:30 in the morning. I'm like, what's going on? And I went in and she was chatting to a friend. And I said, would you like a coffee? And she was like, yeah, sure. And her friend, he said he's single and he'd really like to be with a partner. And he was like, oh, you're so lucky someone offers to make you coffee. And it just really stood out in my mind. I was thinking, like, after 8 years, in another 8 years and another 8 years after that, etc., I always want to be the one who's offering the coffee. I always want to be the one who is, Nick's got a book coming tomorrow. She liked the Spice Girls when she was a kid, and Mel C's new book's out, so I said, well, can I get you the signed copy? She's like, oh, I'd love that. So she can buy it for herself, but here's a little gift. I'd love to get it for you because I know it's something you really want. So there's lots of little ways that have a lot of meaning and purposeful connection between us. I know what matters to her. She knows what matters to me, and we make sure we keep that stuff at the front.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful that you did acknowledge and did notice as well that it doesn't need to be the big things. It can be literally just like, bringing a coffee in the morning and things like that. But so often we just get into the rut or the routine of life, and we stop seeing those things that our partner is doing for us. So
really I never want to take for granted, like coming out of the illness that I had and building this new life, I got an amazing new career and an amazing new partner. And I don't ever want to take those for granted. So gratitude's a really big part of my life. I start every day with a thank you. I'd been doing it for years before I got sick, and now it takes on a whole new meaning. But, I make sure gratitude's part of my professional life, and, and especially with having a really great person that I get to share my life with, I never want her to feel like I take it for granted. I know how lucky I am, and we joke around like, oh, thank you for loving me. Like, this is pretty good. I appreciate it because you're awesome.
Yeah. That's so
I don't
great.
know how I got so lucky.
So as the courage creator, as we've been chatting, I've been reflecting on the role that courage plays in any relationship, romantic or otherwise, but like the courage to start a conversation, to lean into what might be an uncomfortable conflict, lean into asking for what you need, or defending or protecting a boundary. Like, all of those things take courage. If someone's struggling with those things, like, courage creator, how do we create more courage?
I believe you have to choose something that has a lot of meaning for you. So if it's out of your comfort zone, if there's 10 things that are out of your comfort zone, pick the one that has the most meaning for you, which creates motivation. It's the thing that, I use the idea of, what would you regret if you were on your deathbed? What would you regret if you, it sounds morbid, but I mean it in a nice way. If you thought, you might think you have another 50 years left with this person. What if you only had 5? Would you say something? Would you ask the question? Would you ask for what you need? And, it has to be something that the regret or the pain of not doing it or not saying it would be greater than the uncomfortability or the risk associated with doing it. So it has to have a big enough reason for you to walk out of your comfort zone.
I like that you shared that. I recently just read The Power of Regret, how looking backward moves us forward. It's Daniel H. Pink. And the research backs up what you just said, that we regret what we don't do far more than what we do. So if there's something that you want to do and then you never go about doing it, you're far more likely to regret that than having a crack at it and it sucking or not meeting your expectations in some way. Yeah.
And it's learning from experience, like we were saying before. I mean, it's self-reflection. I've paid the price for not speaking my truth in a relationship. How about you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know what that feels like. And so I explain to people I earned the right to talk about courage because I know what it feels like to be too scared, you know, to regret, to wish I had said or done differently. You know, so I don't want to be that person moving forward. So I learned from my experiences, and I believe it's so much better to say how you really feel than to say something else that's not true, because it all comes out in the wash anyway. You know, you could say, oh, no, you look great in that. But then someone takes a photo and you're looking at them like, oh, you know, or a really big issue that if you don't address it, you know, it will play out in a different way. And I think the greatest gift that you can give someone is your authentic self and being open to their authentic self. Like, isn't that the point of relationships? Really getting to know each other rather than just existing side by side. And, you know, I want to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to be there for all of it, not just the shiny Instagram version of a relationship. So I think it does take a lot of courage, you know, like relationships can be full contact emotionally. Because whose opinion do you value more? Who's closer to you? You know, all of those things that really make our hearts vulnerable. But, you know, we mentioned Brené before, like the power of vulnerability. I honestly believe there is massive power in having the courage to be vulnerable with the people that you love.
Yeah. And that ties back to what you were saying earlier about your desire and love for learning, because it allows you to know yourself more, which then allows you to even be more of your authentic self so that you can have more depth in those relationships. And that's definitely been my experience, that the more time I've invested in really knowing myself, the far easier it is to be myself.
100%, you know, like it's so important to be able to share who you are. And a lack of self-awareness means that it's the other person's job to be educating you on what it's like to be with you, or what it's like to be around you, their experience of you. You know, not everyone's open to hearing it. So we have a thing in our relationship that we call road mapping. This can involve a piece of paper and a pen where you literally go, okay, so if we started in this place and we went down this road here, if you turn left, we're going to end up in Shittsville. If you turn right, you're going to end up in Pleasantown. Like, which way do you want to go? And it's becoming aware of what it's like to be with you. And you know, I'm a big fan of therapy. I think everyone should do therapy, just so you learn about yourself and you learn to streamline your life a little bit more, so you don't keep running into the same roadblocks or spinning your wheels in unnecessary ways. So, you know, if I can write a good roadmap based on my self-awareness, I can help you to deal with me better, and vice versa. So, you know, the way that I was brought up, it made me a little defensive. If you bring something up with me, maybe I'll get a little defensive because that's how I was raised. So
always in fight mode.
Yeah, always in fight mode. So I grew up with a lot of arguing.
Yeah.
So, you know, knowing that if Nick says to me, "You're being defensive," how's that going to go?
Yeah, and how do you respond to being defensive? You can't. You're defensive by responding to being called defensive.
Exactly. So if we've gone down that road and ended up in Shittsville a few times, I can draw her a different roadmap and say, if you point that out to me using this tone at that time, maybe we can see if that gets us to a different place. So, you know, she'll say very gently, and she'll smile at me and be like, "You're being a little bit defensive," and that's my cue to not then be defensive. It's my job, because we've talked about it at a time where neither of us was being defensive.
Yeah, we call that emotionally sober.
Yeah, exactly.
We had an emotionally sober conversation before either of us were flooded with feelings.
Exactly. And all of the physiological responses, all the stress hormones. So, it's my job in that moment to switch gears and to recognize, okay, we talked about this. It is actually true. Instead of trying to pretend it's not, okay, I own it. It's true.
I did do that. I do that.
I'm going over here now. Yeah, let's go over here. But it's also, really committing and knowing I never want to hurt this person. I never want to fight with this person. And I've had to point out to a few people over the years in coaching situations when they're telling me about some of the arguments that they've had. And I'm not saying I'm a saint. I've learned from experience all kinds of different ways. But in other words, I don't tell people what to do and how to morally live their lives. I can only share from my own experience. And we call it mirroring. So reflecting back to people, is that really what you want? Is that how you want to argue with this person that you love? Like, where's the boundary? So, we try never to say things that we have to apologize for.
Yeah. And that's such an elegant skill to learn, how to hold up the mirror for someone so that they can really see themselves.
Yeah. And it's up to them what they do with it. No one really likes to have it done. But the beautiful thing is when people are interested in growing, that maybe I didn't like what you said, but is it true? I think it is. Do I want to change it, or am I good with it? And, it's great being in a relationship with somebody who doesn't want to fight, who doesn't want to argue, who's very happy to resolve, who doesn't want to say mean things. And we made that deal very early on because I have a little aggressive nature, like
no way.
Shocker. But so does Nick, exactly. So does Nick. We're both athletic people. She runs ultra marathons and she does boxing and weightlifting and all this stuff. And I could see, there's a little anger in you. There's a little anger in me. Why? Because life. Because of, we've all been through things. So we call it lava. Lava up to the neck. There's a little lava in you. There's a little lava in me. Let's never go volcano on each other because I think that would not end well. So we made a deal and set boundaries really early on that we've both done our absolute best to stick to. So we don't really fight. I'm very, very glad about that. But we talk a lot.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing a little bit about your life story and your professional story, your health journey, your relationship. It's really nice, like you said, to hear from someone's lived experience, what they've learned. So thank you for sharing that. To say thank you, we've actually given a week's worth of classroom education to a child in Borneo. So thank you so much for making that possible and creating that ripple effect that's been possible via our partnership with Buy One, Give One. So thank you.
That's so awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for having me on.
No worries. So Nadine, if people want to connect with you or learn a little bit more about what you do or want to get your book or something like that, how can they do that?
You can do all of the above at nadinechampion.com. You can buy a signed copy of my book that I'll ship out to you. You can inscribe it to someone else as a gift. If you'd like to watch that 10 Seconds of Courage TEDx talk and see whether I did chicken out halfway through, you can look at that on my website or on YouTube. And if you'd like to inquire about any mindset coaching, I'm soon to be launching a course. So all of those good things, or if you'd like me to come and speak at your company, jump on my website.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
All the ways to connect with you. That TED talk is fantastic. It really is. It's very powerful. So thank you for sharing yourself with us and the world.
Oh, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.